Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Yesterday, Game Informer released an interview with devs from Bioware that provided a ton of information about Dragon Age the Veilguard. In addition, Bioware conducted a Q&A last week that provided even more details. This video is a combination of everything I've picked up from both of those sources. There are spoilers that I've placed towards the end of this video, and chapters are below, so you can skip around as you please. Before we get into all that though, we have to talk about the way this Game Informer article starts, because honestly, it's a bad look for both EA and Bioware. This section will be long and brutal, so let me make it clear up front that I am excited for Dragon Age, and I really hope its release is a turning point for the studio. In no way, shape, form, or fashion am I one of the people hoping that it fails, nor am I of the belief that the devs currently working at Bioware are incapable of making a great game once again. I'm just calling a spade when I say this article starts on completely the wrong foot. GI talks about how everywhere they look in the studio, items regarding Anthem are scattered about. Real-life replicas, wallpapers, and posters of Anthem are everywhere. More than Dragon Age, more than Mass Effect, more than KOTOR, and certainly more than Baldur's Gate. I don't know about you, but that makes me feel like most of the devs who were behind BioWare's standout games are long gone, and what's left are the folks behind the developer's biggest disaster. I know that isn't true, but it absolutely feeds into what naysayers have been screaming from the mountaintops. But then things go really bad when Gary McKay, general manager for BioWare, is asked how the studio has dealt with the recent layoffs and turmoil that has been experienced. Quick recap for those who are not aware. Back in October, BioWare laid off 50 employees, and many of them were longtime veterans of the studio. Included in this list were devs like Mary Kirby, who had been with BioWare for 17 years and played a pivotal role in bringing all of the Dragon Age games to life. She is heavily credited with making Varric, Loghain, and Sten the iconic characters that they are today. At the time, Gary said the cuts would be carried out with empathy, respect, and clear communication. It became clear that was not the case when Ms. Kirby, along with 6 other developers, sued BioWare because they attempted to deny her legally owed severance. We all know many of the other developers wanted to sue but didn't have the resources to do so. I have not seen an official follow-up to this story, but some of the impacted devs have reacted very positively regarding recent Veilguard marketing, so my assumption is this got resolved and they received at least some of their money. I asked Ms. Kirby about this on Twitter, but she just gave my comment a like and didn't respond directly. Fast forward 8 months later, and GI asked Gary how the studio is dealing with the fallout of this crisis, and he says, quote, "We have that relentless pursuit for quality, and we have passion and people in the right roles. A lot of the other stuff you're talking about just fades into the background." Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary people of all ages, for those of you who have never worked in corporate America before, let me tell you, this is classic hatchet man verbiage. My employees aren't at all concerned about recent layoffs, or that their jobs might be on the line, or that once they are let go, they'll be denied severance. No, of course not. You know why? They are just too busy delivering quality products and services for our customers. It consumes their every thought. Those screams you hear of people that have worked here for nearly 20 years and have had their whole world destroyed, that's just the white noise me and the other leaders go to sleep with. Only you people in the media pay attention to that rabble. Bruh. I don't know Gary from a can of paint, but he didn't join BioWare until 2020, and it really comes off like he's the face Ian likes using to explain why their CEO Andrew Wilson should rake in $25.6 million in compensation while denying employees severance. Every time Gary opens his mouth about the layoffs, it's just super cringe. Alright, I'm completely off that subject now, so let's talk about the actual game. Honestly, a lot of what was in both the GI article and the QA session sounds very exciting. If you haven't subscribed to Game Informer, I highly recommend it because they did an incredible job detailing information regarding this new Dragon Age entry. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I think the reasoning behind the name change is very strong. Veilguard is an awful title, especially compared to Dread Wolf, but the fact that Bioware believes the companions are core to the experience and want to make sure that's reflected in the name is very promising. To quote director Corinne Bush, Bioware quickly learned and realized that the absolute beating heart of this game is these authentic, diverse companions. That sounds like exactly the type of RPG I like to play. Speaking of games I like to play, Bioware stresses that Veilguard is a true return to their single-player story-driven RPG roots. There is no multiplayer, no microtransactions, and no need to constantly be online. Bioware claims the wealth of choices available in character creation will be very impressive and have a significant focus on inclusivity. They refer to the main character as Rook, but you will be able to choose your own first name, and your race can be elf, Qunari, human, or dwarf, just like in Inquisition. During your playthrough, the camera will adjust based on the height of your character. Qunari will appear to loom over those below, while dwarves will appropriately appear smaller in stature compared to those around them. From there, you literally have a wealth of options to customize your gender, pronouns, height, shoulder width, chest size, hips, how bloodshot your eyes are, how crooked your nose is, and much, much more. There are literally hundreds of sliders to get everything exactly right. You can choose from 4 different voices, and there's a pitch shifter to get that right as well. The game will have nudity, and character creation will provide the opportunity to ensure your character looks spectacular during intimate encounters. On paper at least, it sounds like the most robust character creation system Bioware has ever provided, and Bush believes that everyone can use the system to make someone who represents them on screen. Every NPC in the game, except for specific characters like your party members, were designed using this system. During character creation, you will also select a faction. There are 6 options in the game: Grey Wardens, Antivan Crows, Mournwatch, Shadow Dragons, Veil Jumpers, and the Lords of Fortune. This choice defines your lineage and consequently your last name as well. Your faction provides you with in-game dialogue and reputation standing. It also changes which party members you start with. As the game progresses, you get to talk about choices that were made prior to Varric recruiting you based on your faction choice, and you can also flesh out how those decisions impacted Rook. There will also be reactivity based on how your race and faction interconnect. An example is provided that dwarves cannot use magic, so they would have a much different experience in the Mournwatch than a human would. You can import decisions made in previous games using a version of the Dragon Age Keep that is available in character creation. The import system uses the same tarot card aesthetic as the Dragon Age Keep, but again, it's completely offline. Bioware doesn't want to get into spoiler territory by revealing what decisions are imported, but they stress that there are some very clear connections that will be prominent in the game. One obvious example is the Inquisitor from the last Dragon Age game, who's going to be deeply involved in the new adventure, and you'll be able to customize them in the character creator. Veilguard will have the 3 standard Dragon Age classes: Warrior, Mage, and Rogue. Each of them will have unique skill trees, armors, and specializations. Mage has a specialization for necromancy, elemental damage, and a battle mage option. You can customize weapon loadouts, party abilities, and select options on the skill tree via the pause or start screen. Crafting will also be available, but apparently it's a spoiler how it actually works. Sound like Sando might be making a return. There's a transmog system in the game as well. The skill trees are massive, but they are also very easy to understand. According to Bush, Bioware's philosophy is that these skills should change the way you play, not provide statistical minutiae. You and your companions can level 5 abilities, but only 3 can be used while in combat. You can also switch between different weapon loadouts. Companions will fall into the same 3 archetypes you have access to, but they can use unique mechanics. For example, Neve is an ice mage, while Balar can deal electric damage. Some enemies are vulnerable to specific types of damage. There are runes in the game, which can briefly change your damage type, but you can't get access to the same abilities. The character creator will be released to the public prior to game launch. Moving into combat, all classes have the same layout in that there are light attacks, heavy attacks, and abilities which would use the same buttons. How this plays out will be completely different based on your class. A sword and shield warrior can hipfire or aim their shield to throw it, similar to Captain America, while mages use the same button to launch magical attacks. Warriors can parry enemies to stagger them. Rogues get a larger window to parry enemies. Mages cannot parry at all, but they can use a magic shield that drains mana while blocking incoming attacks. Rogues are the only class that can dual wield. Former Dragon Age executive producer Mark Dara, who consults for Veilguard, spoke very highly of the combat and says he believes it's actually fun. And even more importantly, the team didn't have to make any compromises, which was consistently an issue with previous Dragon Age entries. Combat is in real time, and while the gameplay footage shows Veilguard's mechanics will be a sharp departure from other games in the series, GI says that becomes even more apparent when you unlock more of the skill tree. You can dash, parry, charge moves, and cancel moves you have started. A lot of care has been put into the animation swing through as well. The healing system has been completely revamped. You can combo attacks and also bookmark combos, which means you can pause a combo status with a dash to safety and continue the rest of the combo afterwards. GI claims this looks even cooler than it sounds, and frankly, it sounds bananas. These mechanics are why Bioware feels comfortable limiting the player to 3 abilities from skill trees. There's a lot more you can do with movement, items, and ultimate abilities, so the player always has options. What your party members do when they are given certain commands will depend heavily on what gear they currently have equipped, providing another layer of tactics beyond just their 3 abilities. A huge part of combat is creating combos or synergy between all the different mechanics your team can deploy. An example was provided of creating a gravity well to pull in enemies and slowing time with Neve so that Rook can then unload with a powerful area of effect. This isn't considered a combo, but the synergy within your team made it much easier to deal with enemies. For those of you who prefer to slow things down, there is still a pause menu that brings up the combat wheel, allowing you to select abilities for Rook and your party members. This menu will also tell you enemy weaknesses and inform you of potential combo opportunities. Some devs almost exclusively use the combat wheel, while others only bring it up for companion attacks, so it appears both methods are equally viable. There is a robust difficulty menu that you can customize to make the experience as tactical as you prefer. I mentioned during a breakdown of the gameplay footage that I found the enemy design to be uninspired. Art director Matt Rhodes mentioned that the thinking behind their design is that demons are really supposed to be creatures of feeling and live or die off the emotions around them. Consequently, their new look is meant to reflect a floating nervous system that has been pushed into this world from the Fade and rapidly assembled into bodies out of whatever they could find. That's very lore accurate and honestly makes me think about the look a little differently. I am anxious to see how much enemy variety we will encounter throughout the game. Once you have finished creating a character, a prologue mission will start that places you into Venter. We can already tell from the gameplay footage that the city looks spectacular, and creative director John Epler says that Veilguard is the first RPG where Bioware feels fully in command of the Frostbite engine. Frostbite is EA's proprietary engine, and it was specifically designed for first-person shooters. Bioware used it for Inquisition, and while it certainly looked better than previous entries, there were some pretty significant gameplay issues. It's repeated multiple times that after 10 years, Bioware has a much better handle on the engine. Epler has been with Bioware for 17 years, so his claim that the studio understands Frostbite much better now does have some weight. Veilguard is not open world, and the areas you traverse will vary wildly in size. Some will be very linear and almost on rails, while others will be huge, sprawling landscapes with a fog of war that you have to slowly uncover, along with hidden treasures and secrets. Also, choices you make can have a significant impact on places you visit. Supposedly, the game will have the largest number of diverse biomes in series history, which is certainly a comfort after Dragon Age 2. There will be no mounts in Veilguard. On that same note, Bioware emphasized that they've heard the feedback loud and clear that previous entries have too many fetch quests. Veilguard quests will focus on maintaining a consistent tone, and nearly everything you do will be taken from the lens of would this be worth doing if the fate of the entire world was at stake. And another tidbit that fills me with a lot of hope, Rhodes said that the philosophy for designing Venter actually came from Dorian, one of your Inquisition party members. If he's with you upon entering Halan Sharal's Winter Palace, which is the largest venue in the series history, he comments that it's cute, adorable even, alluding that buildings in Tevinter are significantly larger. GI claims that Tevinter is the most stunning and unique city in the Dragon Age series, and Rhodes says that knowing the city is ruled by mages allowed his team to really let their imaginations run wild. It's not all about spectacle though, as Rhodes is quick to point out the architecture will be firmly rooted in Dragon Age lore. In one section of the city, the player sees significantly more elven murals, and he says this is because Minrathous is a place that was literally built on the bones of what was originally the home of elves. This is exactly what I want to hear about in a new Dragon Age game. For too long, humans have robbed elves of their culture, and it's finally time to take it back. Bioware core lead and Mass Effect executive producer Michael Gambo noted that there's no special hook which forces everyone to pay attention to you. Rook ascends because of competency, not because of a magical MacGuffin. The article goes on to mention that this is a stark contrast to Inquisition, and frankly, I appreciate it. It's nice to have stories like Inquisition or Rogue Trader where all eyes are constantly on you, but I really enjoy stories where you start from the bottom and prove yourself worthy. According to Bush, Veilguard is a story about your leadership. You're defining Rook's leadership style with your choices. GI mentions that there were multiple conversations that felt very meaty, and Veilguard doesn't shy away from discussions that take multiple minutes to get through. Dialogue options will have the usual aggressive, sarcastic, and emotional options. If you ignore romantic overtones from a party member, it's possible they will instead choose to romance someone else. Speaking of party members, we have additional tidbits about each one. Neve Gallus is an Ice Mage private detective. She can also slow down time, an ability available to all mages. Balara Lotara is a Veil Jumper. She has an arm gauntlet that can be used for tinkering with the environment or blasting enemies with electricity. She also has healing magic, which I believe hasn't been available in the series since Dragon Age Origins. Davrin is a Grey Warden who also doubles as a monster hunter and has a small pet griffin named Asan. You can pet and hug the griffin. Emmerich is a member of Navarro's Mornwatch and a necromancer with a skeleton assistant named Manfred. Lucanus is a pragmatic assassin whose bloodline descends from the criminal House of Crows organization. Tosh is a dragon hunter who is allied with the Piratic Lords of Fortune. Finally, Harding of course needs no introduction for Dragon Age fans, and due to her history, she can provide the most information about how Solis used to be. You can advance bonds with a particular character by including them in your party for main quests and doing their personal quests. Every time you level up in a relationship, that character gets a skill point. Just helping them is not enough. The choices you make, what you say, and how you help them matters a great deal. All of the companions are pansexual, and Rook can romance any of them. They will talk about previous romances as you develop relationships with them. You are limited to 2 companions while exploring. I've mentioned I hate that and really prefer being able to bring out 5 to 6 party members, but Bioware's reasoning is very solid. Bush mentioned during the Q&A that they believe limiting you to 2 companions allows the devs to focus on those characters a lot more and makes the player much more aware of what each is doing. They also stressed that not only is there a lot of banter in the group you explore with, but there's also a ton of opportunities for the whole group to interact with each other back at home base. They want it to feel like each companion has an entire life they are living outside of adventuring with you. Alright, now we are entering spoiler territory, so if you don't want to hear about that, just skip to the next chapter. The GI article talks more about what happened to Rook after interrupting Solis' ritual, which occurred at the end of the gameplay footage Bioware provided last week. You wake up in a dreamlike landscape and suddenly hear Solis' voice. He explains that your blood interacted with the ritual and connected you to him in the Fade. The ritual he was conducting would move the elven gods Elganon and Gilganane to a new prison because the one he had previously constructed was failing. Now, unfortunately, he is trapped in the Fade and the gods are free to roam. I love this because it deeply complicates siding with the elves. I always thought I'd be siding with Solis and helping the elves rise up, but siding with their tyrannical previous leaders is a different matter entirely. When Rook finally shakes out of the dream state, you are still in the Fade, albeit with Harding and Neve. During the gameplay footage, you ask one of them to hang back, putting that party member in more danger. That decision won't matter, but later decisions when you choose between party members will carry more weight. Neve, Harding, and Rook are standing in the lighthouse, which is a special magical realm that was the lair of Solus himself. The lighthouse serves the same purpose as Skyhold did in Inquisition, allowing your team to connect and grow. Searching through this place will also provide you with more insight into Solus. Bush mentioned that elves will have unique dialogue options during this section. The team makes a decision to return to the ritual site in Arlington Forest. To do this, they use an Illuvian, and Veilguard will sport a network of teleporting Illuvians that allow us to easily travel to distant places. On the way there, we are intercepted by Strife and Irulan. I am not familiar with either of these characters, but they are from the Dragon Age to Venture Knights anthology that was released in 2020. Guess I'll need to do some reading before this game comes out. Both characters are experts in ancient elven magic and part of the same Veil Jumpers faction that Balara is aligned with. Balara is the first companion you have to actually recruit, unlike Neve and Hardin, who just automatically join you. Once Rook finds her, it becomes clear all of you are trapped in a veil bubble, and there's no way to escape. GI notes that the game clearly communicates this situation is dire, but at the same time, Balara maintains a bubbly perspective. This is interesting to note because one of the main criticisms of the cinematic trailer was how she came off as much more plucky and happy than what you would expect from someone who has consistently seen the horrors of the Veil. Bioware specifically calls out that Balara and Arlington Forest overall is more whimsy than the much more grim locations and grimmer story moments you will encounter in Veilguard. Very interested to see if they have balanced this properly. Balara is the player's window into Arlington Forest, and she loves old elven artifacts. Shortly after meeting her, it becomes clear the area is being overrun with darkspawn, even though the deep roads, where they usually come from, aren't nearby. This is most likely due to the escaped blighted elven gods that are now freely roaming Thedas. GI says the visual spectacle of blight tentacles wrapping around the forest and corrupting it is even more impressive than seeing Tevinter. Soon you reach a floating forest that Balara believes holds the key to getting out of the Fade. To reach it, she uses a unique ability called Tinker to interact with ancient technology. Over time, Rook will get access to the same abilities to use when Balara isn't available. Activating this technology causes enemies to attack us, and Balara dispatches them with an arcane bomb that detonates for tremendous damage after being hit with a heavy attack. She can switch between a magical staff or magical daggers. In the fight, she charges a heavy attack with her staff, switches to daggers for quick attacks, and then switches back to the staff to unleash the charged attack. Again, this sounds absolutely bananas. Once the party reaches the tower, a difficult darkspawn ogre boss fight ensues, and Balara discovers an archive spirit that might be able to help us. Then the demo ends. Alright, so with all of that being provided, what are my thoughts? Let's start with what I like. I'm loving what I'm hearing about companions. I really appreciate again that the game is focusing on them. Bioware games, in my opinion, have always been better when the main focus is the companions, and hopefully that pans out here. The character creator obviously sounds very impressive as well. Honestly, I've never been a person who was all that big on character creation, but Baldur's Gate 3 and Dragon's Dogma 2 have really changed my mind about that. I really appreciated the opportunity to dig in and craft exactly the type of character that I wanted, and so I'm hoping that Veilguard is going to give me at least somewhat of a similar experience. Sounds like you'll be able to change some things in Veilguard that you weren't able to tinker with in those two games. Very exciting. I love that Veilguard is not open world, and instead they have these smaller, handcrafted locations which will hopefully help to ensure that you don't walk long distances without doing anything, which is kind of the way Inquisition felt. It sounds like the size of the areas is based upon what fits for the actual quest you are undertaking, and again, I think that's absolutely fantastic. The combo pause tactics, as far as you've been able to charge combos while switching to other things, or pausing your combo for safety and then come back to it, sounds very interesting. GI speaks highly of it, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing that actually play out. They repeatedly mention a grim world and the fact that this is going to be a grim, dark story. That's exactly what Dragon Age should be, so again, just reinforces that hopefully this game will be in the same spirit as the rest of the games in the series. I love the huge focus on elves. Even with Solus not being a central character, it's definitely clear, especially if you listen to the spoiler part, that the elves are going to be a big portion of what happens in Veilguard, which is the part of the storyline that excites me the most. I really want to see if Bioware will give us the opportunity to change the fortune for elves moving forward in the Dragon Age lore. And then finally, I'm really interested in the focus on visual variety. It sounds like Tevinter is incredible to see, but in a very different way from Arlington Forest. And that brings up, what are some of the different areas you're going to visit, and will they be able to keep up that visual distinctness? BioWare said repeatedly that you're going to visit a lot of different places in this game, and so it's not going to be as contained as the first few games were. Which brings up my first hesitation regarding what I've heard thus far. Because you're going to be bouncing around to these different places that are in completely different areas, I wonder if you'll really feel like you'll have an opportunity to explore and become grounded in a particular city or area. By the end of Origins, I felt like I really knew and understood Ferelden. Same with Kirkwall in Dragon Age 2. Same with Orlais in Dragon Age Inquisition. But with this game, bouncing around to so many different places, I wonder, are we going to feel like we really understand and got our true opportunity to explore Tevinter by the end of the game? I'm definitely concerned about that. Being able to visit Tevinter was absolutely one of the top 5 things I was looking forward to most about the game. So if you're only just able to spend a couple of hours there and then you have to move on to other places, that honestly would be a disappointment. I also still have reservations about only being given 3 abilities to use for my characters, especially because they mention specific enemies will have specific weaknesses. It'll be very important for you to combo and synergize with your party members, but at the same time, it'll be very important to switch between all of them on a regular basis so that you're properly building up your relationship with them and hopefully unlocking more of their secrets. So to me, it sounds like you might have to change your mechanics around pretty consistently in order to fit whatever 2 party members you need to have on your squad. How easy will respecking be in the game? And is this going to feel like a chore, or is it going to feel like it actually makes sense based on how the game is designed? That's definitely a concern, but we'll see. I'm also still concerned about the fact we're only limited to 2 companions. I feel a little bit better about it based upon the reasoning they provided. But still, you all know me, I prefer CRPGs where you can bring 5 to 6 party members with you at one time, and to only have 2, it just feels very limiting. I can't explain to you why it doesn't feel limiting in Mass Effect. Yeah, I just never have a problem with it in Mass Effect, and maybe I'll feel the same way here. Maybe they brought over so many elements from Mass Effect that it's just going to feel natural, but being a Dragon Age fan for right now is definitely a point of contention. And just overall, when I look at the combat, it looks very button mashy. It looks like you're going to have to be jumping around all the time and that enemies are damage sponges. And it just doesn't look all that fun. But at the same time, we're not seeing the footage that GI had access to that apparently shows off a lot more of the mechanics that will be available to you. I stick with what I said during the gameplay footage when I live streamed it. I really feel like Bioware would have been better served by showing gameplay footage from the middle of the game that allowed players a much better understanding of what kind of mechanics they'll have access to. But then again, there's something to be said for starting at the bottom and slowly building up to something that the fans will really come to appreciate. So hopefully before the game releases, we'll get a window into what GI saw, and we can have the same level of excitement that they apparently do for the combat system. And that's my thoughts. At the end of the day, again, I'm excited for this game. I definitely want to play it. I still don't think it's going to be up to the same level of quality as the original games in the series, but I do feel like Bioware is making an honest attempt to provide something that we can enjoy. The fact that there are no microtransactions, you don't have to be online. They want to make this as clean and pure and iconic a Bioware experience as they possibly can. I really appreciate it. And to be honest with you, that alone makes this game something that I really want to support. I am so tired of the usual microtransaction drivel. So anyway, those are my thoughts. That's all the information I have regarding Dragon Age the Veilguard. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.